Hello, good morning. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. So my name is Sebastián Valenzuela. I'm class of 2011, actually, here at UT Austin. So this is kind of a family reunion for me and for many of you. So thank you for making it this early. Breakfast is great. I know we're competing against the breakfast, but now we're here. You guys can eat as much as you want because eating and having coffee was something that Max used to love to do. So we're going to be honoring Max today with many of you. So thank you for attending. In addition to being class of 2011, now I'm an associate professor in Catholic University in Chile. And we made a trip with my family, Teresa's there, all the way to Austin from Santiago to honor Max, in addition to honor Rosenthal and the ISOJ. But Max was my advisor, so this is kind of a very touching and emotional session. But along with me, we have many friends who will be speaking about Max. We have many speakers, not a lot of time. I'll try to keep everyone more or less, in time, but we'll do our best. So before we begin this research session, I just wanted to take a moment to honor the memory of a scholar whose work has shaped generations of journalism and communication researchers, Max McCombs. For decades, Max illuminated the power of the media to shape public thought, co-founding agenda-setting theory with Don Shaw and inspiring a global body of research. His legacy extends beyond his pioneering scholarship. It lives on in the countless students he mentored, the colleagues he inspired, and the institutions he helped across the world. Those who knew Max personally will remember not just his intellect, but his warmth, curiosity, humor, and passion, whether for research, for opera, wine, or even the occasional mystery novel. He was, in every sense, a true gentleman of our field. Today, as we continue exploring the questions that matter to him, we do so in gratitude and remembrance. Let us carry forward his spirit of inquiry and his belief in the power of ideas to shape the world. Max, this one's for you. So to help us further reflect on Max's life and work, we're going to begin with three scholars who are sitting there who will have a few minutes to share a few words about how Max influenced them and how they're now honoring Max. So we have Professors Tom Johnson, Professor Talia Stroud, and Professor Steve Reese. I don't know if anyone wants to go first, so Talia's going first. So thank you, Talia.
Appropriate that we honor his legacy here at the International Symposium on Online Journalism. Max's theory, agenda setting, proposes that the more the media cover an issue, the more people believe that the issue is important. The idea is sometimes categorized as a minimal effect in media effects textbooks, because agenda setting proposes that the media affect not what we think, but only what we think about. But as Max would say with a twinkle in his eye, agenda setting and its extensions are anything but minimal. And that's the thing about Max. He was kind and unassuming, and the next thing you knew, he had a massive effect on you. Yeah. I first met Max nearly 20 years ago as a first-year assistant professor. He showed up at my office door out of the blue one day, holding a journal and asking if I was the same person who had authored an article appearing in it. It turns out I was. And I'm just as dumbfounded and honored today as I was when this first happened. We started going to lunch every few months to chat about research. If you didn't have the privilege of going to lunch with Max McCombs, you've truly missed out. He knew the best restaurants, the best wines, and occasionally even the waiters who served you. And this wasn't even the best part of lunch. The best part was the ideas. Max truly was one of the field's best agenda setters. Whether giving helpful advice on research ideas, inspiring and directing his students, or even working to influence his own children's career choices by applying his theory. And he always had an exciting new project. Even in the month before his death, he was still sending emails, excited about new agenda setting ideas. With Max's passing, we have lost a true giant. And just like his theory, Max's humble and kind mannerisms are not minimal at all. He had a massive effect on me, on his colleagues and students, and on the field as a whole, and I was privileged to have known him. Thank you for giving all of us a few moments to honor his memory.
That is going to be tough to follow. I'm just going to do a couple of very short memories. I mean, I think I first met Max at an AJ at in San Francisco. I went out to dinner with him and Wayne Wanta. And again, you knew who, what wine to drink because he knew what wine to drink. But my two biggest memories, one, when he retired, UT was kind of treating it like any other retirement. I said, no, this is Max McCombs. And so we had a fun there where we could organize a conference and bring in graduate students and PhD students. And when I did this, I kind of considered myself a fraud. I hadn't done much agenda setting research, but he warmly invited me into the community. So did the people there, and I made some lifelong friends through that. But picking up on Ty, my favorite memories were going to lunch. We'd go to lunch about every other week. And one of the things about Max is that he was just a true Southern gentleman. He just, again, he so unassuming. You would never know that he was the founder of a major theory, that he, as I said, you always, over Coke and a sandwich often, just you get a lot of brilliant ideas, and just, I mean, he lived a good life, and just hearing wonderful stories from Max, and particularly he often was talking about his wonderful relationship with grad students. And so I'll tell I got teary when I saw the picture because I said I have really missed Max and those lunches.
Good morning, I'm Steve Reese, and I came in 1982, and Max came 3 years later in 85, and we were very excited to have him come at that time because we thought it'd make a big impact on our program. And, as a young assistant professor on the make, that was important to me, that I'd be a part of something. So I was told that I have 2 minutes to speak, and so I'll keep it parsimonious. Max was a big person about parsimony, and we're taught in theory to be parsimonious, to explain a lot of things with few ideas. And he was big on metaphors, and metaphors are a way of explaining a lot and comparing it to something else. And so the agenda idea itself is a metaphor. So it's natural that Max would be attracted to that. When I first was talking to him about some of my ideas, I said, Max, I'm interested in how these sources of news, work together to create a construct. And he said, yes, an agenda of sources. I said, no, not quite that way. It's more ideological. It's more, the news is converging into a coherent picture. Yes, an agenda of perspectives. I said, no, not quite like that. But anyway, you realize how if you have a compelling idea, it can have an impact. And this idea of agenda has been paradigmatic and hegemonic. And I don't think Max ever used the word hegemony in anything he ever wrote, but it is hegemonic, as you can see from the number of his disciples and the impact that it's had on others. And it's hard to think outside the paradigm once you're inside of it, and so that you can see how that all works. So I feel fortunate that Max was here. He had an impact on me and on the field and on our program, and we're thankful for that. And we could all wish for nothing more than to make an impact on the field. I think the only thing that kept him going at the end apparently was the idea of getting to the 4th level agenda setting. Yeah. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And wow, you kept in time. Well, so I'm impressed. So thank you. Thank you, Steve, Talia, Tom. So continuing with our session, I'd like to now turn to Dr. Paula Poindexter, one of his former advisees at Syracuse University, and later his colleague, right, and friend here at UT, who will share more about Max's profound impact on many of us on the field and outside of it. So Dr. Poindexter, if you might. Thank you. You want to put this thing? Okay.
For the still photographer who was just. Good morning. I was trying to get Sebastián to let you all just eat and chat for a while, because that, we haven't seen, there are a lot of people I haven't seen Sebastián. But anyway, and they said, no, we have to stick to the schedule. And so anyway, I apologize that you didn't get a chance to kind of get to, acquainted again and everything and eat your breakfast. I'm Paula Poindexter, and if I were to introduce myself in relationship to Max McCombs, so he was my dissertation chair. He was my mentor. He was my colleague. He was my friend. In many ways, he was a visionary. He saw things about me and my future that I did not see. And he had this way about him that he would kind of lead you in this direction. I mean, like, you didn't know that you were going over to do research in a certain area, but eventually it became clear because I was just, what Max did. And the truth is, a lot of the lessons that I learned from him as my mentor, then I do or have done with some of my own graduate students. So I guess the big question is, how in the world did I ever get to meet Max McCombs? And I had no idea who this guy was. And he had already published, some of the most important of his, well, the first, agenda setting studies, but I had no idea. So let me just give you a little bit of that background. And Sebastián has me on the clock, but I'm going to try to get everything in before he tells me I have to sit down. So I had recently graduated from the University of Texas at Austin as a radio, TV, film major who had no interest in journalism, because what I wanted to do was to produce and write television programs in Los Angeles. So that was my plan. But it turned out that I was hired to be a news reporter and producer for the most popular TV program at 5 o'clock at the NBC affiliate in Houston. And I had no journalism background, but in those days, you could get hired to do journalism with having no knowledge of journalism. And so after doing this, very popular, doing on-the-air work and also producing, and the truth is I liked the producing a whole lot more than I liked being on the air. But after almost 3 years, then I decided it's time for me to go for my next big dream, which essentially I wanted to be a magazine writer in New York City. And so it's a good thing I did not fulfill that dream, knowing unfortunately where magazines are today. But I learned that Syracuse, the Newhouse School, would be a great place to go because they also had a pipeline to New York City. So I had saved enough money for just one semester to get me through one semester of Syracuse, but I felt that I would do so well that they would give me money for the rest, to finish my degree. And so I went to Syracuse, got through the first semester, of course, all A's, and I didn't have any funding to continue. And so one of the members of the faculty, not in the Newhouse School, had suggested, well, go see the dean, the dean of the Newhouse School, and tell the dean that you need some money to finish your degree, which I did. And so I went to the dean and I, said I've done very well, told him about my background, explained my plight, and he said, go to the research center, which was in the basement of the Newhouse School, and tell Max McCombs I said, give you a job. And then go to the provost and tell the provost I said, give you tuition so you can finish your degree. And so all of that worked out. I went to the Communications Research Center, which I did not realize at the time that Max was also the director of the American Newspaper Editors Association research effort. And they had a major research effort going on. And they were conducting a lot of research. So I was learning real research, conducting real surveys, in newspaper communities, primarily around the East and the Northeast and so forth. And I started with just coding. And so while in my graduate program, I was learning about it theoretically, but in the Communications Research Center with Max, I was learning the real world. And it's like, ooh, I really love this. I love this because I'm learning what people are saying about, various issues and so forth. So, and Max would come, I was in the back coding and he would come back and, we would just chat about it. And he was kind of, making sure that I understood or implicitly understood that there was a future for me in survey research, probably getting a PhD, but that was not what I was thinking. But anyway, I had all of these opportunities, including because they were doing real world research, that a little private plane would come, fly up, pick me up, and we were going to newspaper markets around the Northeast, and it was just really fantastic. And so after I ended up staying to get a PhD and so forth, and I went to, work for the Los Angeles Times on the business side, because I was actually conducting the type of research that I had been doing in the Communications Research Center. And it was wonderful until, it was time to go. But Max had been recruiting me to come to UT, as a visiting professor, which I did, and I'm still here. But one of the things that I wanted to just share with you, not only, I know most of you know Max for agenda setting, but he was very involved in other types of research, including, the first studies, some of the early studies that were done about the news audience and understanding the news audience, which really is my area of specialty. And I thank Max, for that. And not only that, Max, one of the areas that you may or may not know, how many of you are familiar with the civic duty to keep informed? So that Max's idea, and graduate student, working with him on that and some of the research, and that area is still being researched today. And in fact, I'm working with one of our graduate students using some of my data from my forthcoming book that we are going to look, specifically at some areas related to the civic duty to keep informed as it relates to people who are using social media for news. And so that just continues. And then the final thing that I wanted, to say about Max, and this was something that was dear to his heart, And while I was graduate advisor, Max, still in the faculty, he had an endowed chair. And he came up with this wonderful idea because we wanted to encourage publishing among our graduate students. And we really needed to give our graduate students this extra incentive to publish. And so as a result of this, he came up with the Max, well, he didn't name it, we named it. As a graduate advisor and also the GSC chair, we named it. So the Maxwell McCombs Graduate Student Research Publishing Award. And he never would have named something after himself, but we named it. And so, but he was so proud of it. And so every year, the students, and he came up with how this was going to work. Every year, students who had actually published in a journal article, and it didn't matter how many journal articles, that they would receive acknowledgement, including, it wasn't the biggest cash award, but it was a cash award. And also a certificate. And he would personally sign. So if you have one of those certificates, he would personally sign those certificates. I've created the certificates, he signed them. And so this went on, for several years until it's time, that he retired. And it's like, okay, that was not good news. But I will say, because the money for those cash prizes was coming from his endowment chair, which they could use for anything they wanted, and he gave away money to the graduate students, that essentially with his retirement, he was going, that was going to go away. But fortunately, an anonymous donor gave $7,500 in order to continue the McCombs Research Publishing Award for graduate students. However, that was not enough money because the university said, okay, we can make this an endowment, but you need to have $25,000. So we had a good start, and we did get to $25,000. I served as chair, and we were able to continue it. Students get cash awards, certificates still today. And I want you to know that since that was started by Max McCombs, that 79 graduate students from our graduate program at the University of Texas at Austin in the School of Journalism and Media, that they have received this McCombs Award. And I bet if we were to check each and every one of your CVs, it would be on the CV. It is that special. So I would like to end, and I know this is your cue, I would like to end for all of you who have received, who are recipient, who have been a recipient of the McCombs Graduate Student Research Publishing Award, if you would just stand. And you stand too, you need to go up there. Oh. I don't need, yeah, just stand so we can get up. Thank you, and thank you.
That, Dr. Poindexter, and you're right. Max was not just an agenda-setting scholar, as most people always make that point very clear to us in grad school. So I'm glad consistency and parsimony, as Steve would say, right? So the last part of this session is devoted actually to ongoing research that one way or another still reflects upon some of the ideas that Max McCombs would have developed with Don Shaw, David Weaver, and other of his colleagues within the agenda setting tradition, and moving them forward and keeping them alive. So we're going to have a couple of those presentations. I know we're still in time, so hopefully we get them to be presented in due time. Vanessa Higgins, do you want to go first, please? Dr. Higgins, not only a former student of UT and Dr. McCombs, now a professor in Actually, like right around the corner, right? In San Marcos. Thank you, Texas State. All right.
The
What you
time,
have
right?
1 minute,
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Summer. I really inspired by Dr. McCombs and have a homecoming really. A lot of my, all of my dissertation advisors, including Dr. McCombs in memory. And my gratitude. Presenting with my graduate committee and my so I am going to present an elaboration of a study that I conducted in my book, and I had the pleasure of being able to discuss some of these ideas with Dr. McCombs. And as Talia was saying, he had a way of bringing his agendas of what was going on. Discuss some of these ideas then already as a very grateful for all of it throughout the years. So this study discusses the possibility of consensus building in an age of fragmented media in Latin America, and also an age of polarization. So it focuses specifically in Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia. There are three of the biggest news market in the region, and also with a very strong media system, a thriving digital native community. With, get to hear a little bit here in the symposium, so always thrilled to be. And yeah, so I was interested in seeing how consensus could be built. We're facing increased and a fragmented media system. At the time of this study is based on a survey, and at the time that the survey was being conducted, it was during COVID, and at the very time, Latin America was at the epicenter of the pandemic. And I say that because it relates to what people were thinking about and also how they were reacting to media. So there was increased trust in news media with some big campaigns on disinformation. So theoretically, which is where Max picture here, this study is grounded on consensus building theory, which is I was studying in my dissertation. So very neat to present it. And so it's based on consensus building, and consensus building, am I too far? Oh, goodness gracious, sorry. Okay, so consensus building is grounded on Laswell's idea that the media had an important function to serve society, which is of correlating different segments into focusing on the important issues so that you could aid mobilization and prevent threats. And in this age of fragmented media systems, a lot of people focusing on different media for their information. I was wondering, is it still possible? Because consensus was a theory that was proven in an era of mass media, and I was wondering if in this era of fragmented media, if that was still possible. So the consensus building is a consequence of agenda setting. So with the prioritization of news media, the news media not only tells people what to think, which is what we all know about this, the theory, but it also has the ability of bringing, so telling people what to think in that triangle would be the media and different groups together, right? So it's the top of the triangle here. So it not only has that ability of bringing people closer together into what to think about, but it has the ability of bringing different groups of together, different groups of society together in some common ground. So in the metaphors that Dr. McCombs was used so frequently and so clearly to idea, I borrowed the bridge idea. So the news media provides this bridge, not only by providing information to people, but by being a place where people from different areas, groups of society can cross, come closer, and exchange ideas that will bring them. Based on a survey in July 2020, I was looking at education, so lower and higher education is dichotomized. And so here we go, some of the results. So when looking at the most important problem in that time, we see that COVID was definitely at the top of people's agenda in Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia. But there were differences with the economy being more salient in Argentina and corruption being more salient in Colombia. And at that, and also lower and higher education groups were significantly different. So there was a difference in the perspective of the important issues between lower and higher education. So I looked at the digital news media use, and if the increased use of digital media use would bring lower and higher education groups closer together. And I found that it did, that as digital media use increased by lower and higher education groups, that they were indeed brought closer together into consensus. I also did a factor analysis of the reasons for accessing news by country, and the factors were interactivity style, high quality news, and ease of access. And while ease of access was definitely the greatest reason people access digital news in their countries, there were some differences into how those reasons were relating to consensus building. So I wanted to know if the reasons for accessing news interacted with the relationship the prioritization of COVID as the most important issue. So what I found was that when interactivity and style was faced with education, that there was a negative effect into prioritizing COVID-19 as the most important factor. But that when high quality news education, that there was a positive relation with, positively predicted COVID-19 as the most important, that there was no effect with these. So what that finding there, that that theoretically we discuss these important contingent conditions that agenda setting occurs, and therefore consensus building occur And what I find is that perhaps in this age of fragmented media system and digital media, that we need to look into the reasons why people are accessing these news organizations, the contingent conditions into the effects that media might have on people, meaning while people look for media for different reasons, audiences look for reason why if they are choosing quality news, may be a reason increasing of building consensus. Stop here so we can hear from others, but the game is afoot. There's more to be found.
So for our second and last presentation, Zhi Lin, grad student at UT, and her work on, where are you there? How are you?
Everyone, my name is Zhi Lin, and I'm a third-year PhD student in School of Journalism and Media. It's truly an honor to be the graduate student representative here at this panel, to honor Dr. Max McCombs and also to appreciate the graduate student, Max McCombs Graduate Student Publishing Award as one of the recipients. So before I talk about my study, I want to briefly talk about how I came to know agenda setting theory and Dr. Max McCombs' work. I learned agenda setting theory in my first year of my undergraduate in my communication theory class. And after that, I went to my university library to borrow this book, Setting the Agenda, the Mass Media and Public Opinion. And this book was the very first communication theory in English that I read as an undergraduate student in China. And I believe that many international students across the world had the same experience. I wasn't very sure about what academic research is back in that time, but I was happy to find that actually academic literature in English can be easy to understand because the book was so well written. And agenda setting theory is telling an important story of the society using very simple language, very straightforward, very easy to understand, which is a good thing for undergraduate students. And this really inspired me and motivated me to read more academic literature and increase my interest in doing academic research, which I think it's a very important starting point of my whole career. When I was in my fourth year of my undergraduate, I started a study looking at the transnational and intermedia agenda setting between Chinese media, US media, and Chinese diaspora media in the US. And I was able to present it at the AEJMC in 2020. It was COVID and everything was online. And I was presenting this at 4 a.m. in Hong Kong. But I was so excited and because I met so many great professors, even though it was online. Dr. Summer Harlow was the panel discussant at that time. And I was so happy to receive support and encouragement from Dr. Don Shaw and Dr. Christopher Avarga, who sent me very supportive words from chatbox. But today I want to, and I feel like this may be the starting point of my own personal connection with the agenda setting community and the School of Journalism, Moody College. But today I want to talk about another ongoing study, unfinished study of my work, agenda diverting the role of political bots in digital public diplomacy on social media. My own research looks at the intersection of global political communication and social media ecosystem. And many of my research, my work looks at how virtual embassies on social media perform digital public diplomacy on social media. And these embassies perform purposive communication with foreign publics, aiming to gain their support and create favorable conditions to advance foreign policy objectives. On social media platforms, there's another group of powerful communicators, political bots. They might create automated filters which lead to echo chamber, reinforcing political polarization, and ultimately they might decrease the credibility of digital platforms and online content. But can they be really that influential? It's still undecisive. It's still under debate. According to the literature, there are two ways of influencing public opinion by political bots. They might fabricate trending topics covering up real trends so they can distract public attention. They might amplify certain political views and construct agendas of political issues by posting highly crafted posts. And I think network agenda setting theory, the third level of agenda setting theory, resonate with these approaches because bots, they make connection with existing authentic trends with fabricated content. And in this study, I look at how Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs perform public diplomacy on Twitter, X, and how political bots play a role in the process. And so these are the research questions. I scraped all the tweets from 3 Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs accounts on Twitter published in the year of 2020, and I filtered out tweets that are related to COVID-19. And I did some systematic sampling, and I tested whether the accounts were bought using bottometer. And I'll just skip some details because of the time limit. Me and my co-author developed a code book, which involves 3 types of codes. First is issue agenda about COVID-19 pandemic. Second is attribute agenda of each issue agenda. And the third is political entity, because we want to look at which political entity is referring to when this communicator is discussing these agendas. So 3 types of political entities: China, US, and other political entities. And based on and you can imagine how huge the workload is, because we manually analyze, coded nearly 8,000 tweets. Based on the results, I constructed bipartite network, which is a type of network that includes 2 types of nodes. And here I include attribute agenda nodes and political entity. And I also divided the data sets into 2 parts because I want to compare how the agenda changes over time from the first half of 2020 to the second half of 2020. So this is a brief preliminary results findings from the analysis. These are the bipartite networks of Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I show the center of the network just for a better readability. As you can see, the agenda networks were pretty consistent. Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs focused on spread and control measures by China and international engagement of China and international collaboration with other political entities and global. And also, and these 2 networks were agenda network of the bots. And again, very similar, they have very consistent agenda. They focus on political factors of China, which basically talking about the Chinese government and the spread and also the origin of virus and the US. So these are pretty central in the network over time. But I do notice there's a change in the agenda network among the public. Originally, in the first half of 2020, the public talked a lot about political factors of China and other political entities. And also origin of virus. And then in the second half of 2020, you see that agendas about other political entities and global were not central anymore. They still talk about China, political factors of China, and the U.S. agenda became a lot more central. And so it seems like the political bots are steering public attention to agendas related to China, but Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs might also affect the attention and the discussion of the agendas, and that's something that I will further explore. And that's all for my presentation, and thank you so much. And I do want to emphasize my appreciation to the Max McCombs Graduate Student Publisher Award, which is a big thing, and I have already added to my CV.
So we're almost on time, so thank you for staying with us, and sorry for some of the presentations. I know where I was rushing. We were able to accomplish a lot, and I think I'm just gonna wrap it up with the final project that Max was working on that I had the pleasure of with. It's going to be presented at another conference later in this year in Denver, the ICA annual conference. It's a project with Lei Guo, who's also a former student here. She's now a professor at Land University, and Diego Gomez, who's also a professor of computer science at the University of Notre Dame, an assistant professor. And so after I and Max, we worked together on the third edition of his book that she presented. We kind of part ways in a way because I'm not really doing a lot of, I didn't study research after the book. But then Max in his last year called me and he said that he has this idea that has been in a way nagging him for a long time, which is the fact that he has always has been criticized for agenda setting research kind of being a bare bones version of how the media actually work and the public work in terms of you have these neat agendas, ranks of issues and topics, but they said, really people don't experience the news necessarily like that in terms of agendas. It's much more convoluted. It's a world of networks. So he had been working with Lei many years ago on this concept of network agenda setting. It has been called the third level of agenda. But still, it was to him too simplistic, the idea of having no issues or attributes being connected somehow and one network replicating, the media network being replicated by the public network of a future agenda. So he had this idea that he called the Rubik's Cube problem of agenda setting, which is that in the end, you need to move to a three-dimensional kind of world where all agendas are connected to each other in some way, but at the same time, there are multiplex, multi-layered networks. But he didn't have the tools to actually work with this idea. He has this metaphor, as Steve would say, right? This idea of a Rubik Cube. So basically what we did with Lei, being a more computational science, social science researcher, and Diego, who's a computer scientist per se, we kind of said this metaphor, it can have an empirical version of it. And basically, we've been working with this idea for the past year, and Max, almost to his last few days with us here, he would email us with ideas of how we could develop more these thoughts. And after he passed away, we learned the news that the ICA had accepted this first draft of a version of the theory. So we don't know. We don't know if it's going to be called the fourth level of agenda setting because we're like, come on, that was kind of Max's thing. Lei, Diego, and I were like, this is a cool idea. We don't know, but we'll see. But anyway, that's that. So if you're interested in that, wait for June till we present it, and we'll see each other. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Enjoy the rest of the conference and the symposium. Thank you.